webinar, and I really want to welcome everyone again with heartfelt gratitude to each one of you who have, nominated yourself to come and present your project. Chad, Sergio, thank you so much for presenting. And I think the idea of today's webinar, and this is a series that we will do with our mentees and mentors, is the mentors would, get an opportunity to share their project learnings, best practices, and areas of improvements in their specific projects with the mentees. And it'll be a huge opportunity for mentees to learn from the real life experience of the mentors. And I really would want to welcome Chad and Sergio for being the first ones for the webinar. We apologize for the last minute confusion for yesterday. Um, un manageable situations came in and we had to kind of drop the session for yesterday, but we will be rescheduling it. I would like to kind of convey that message. Um, I think without wasting much of our time, I would request Chad to please go ahead and present your project to everyone. And I think the door's open for learning. My other suggestion for the mentees is please use the chat box to ask questions, and or if you feel free to unmute yourself the way Chad and Sergio would like to navigate the session, feel free to do that, please, because we want as much as conversations and communication to happen so that there's immense learning. Thank you. Chad, oh yes, Florence.
Thank you very much, Jaya. I was just wondering, because I have to leave early at the top of the hour, do we have a roadmap or a plan for how this is going to roll? Um, like an agenda, 10 minutes for Chad, 10 minutes for Sergio, or what?
Yes.
How are we,
Yeah,
is that?
so each mentor will have 15 minutes for presentation and about 5 minutes to Q&A. And
Mhm.
so we'll do first chat, then a bit
Mhm.
of question and answers, and then Sacho would go ahead and present.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Okay. All right, Chad, over to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I was just wondering if you could turn on the sharing feature so I could share my
I
screen.
will,
That'd be
yes, I
wonderful.
just made it. You will be able to share your screen now. Yeah.
There we
Can you
go.
try?
Screen share. How does that look? Can you see my screen?
There. I think the screen is appearing. Yes, yes, we
Okay,
can.
there we go. Wonderful. Hello, everybody. My name is Chad Green. I'm an internal evaluator here at Loudoun County Public Schools in Northern Virginia. I've been here for almost 20 years. I tell people it never gets old, and it is so true. And I want to share with you a project that I unintentionally created over, 10 years ago that was the basis of a curiosity that I had, and that ended up becoming a network of educational researchers and evaluators. That wasn't the intention initially. It was just I had a curiosity and I followed it relentlessly. Let me just put it that way. And so, what I'm going to do is walk you through more or less a simulation of how this whole thing transpired so that you in the future hopefully will consider pursuing a similar course of action out of curiosity. And so I will move on to the next slide. Forgive me, I have worked with so many different platforms here. Okay, so let's go back in the time machine to the context of how this all transpired. I have attended at least 30 conferences. Let me just put it out there. So back in, what was this, summer of 2016, uh, you know, I had attended a lot of conferences. I had cycled through the pre-K to 12 educational evaluation TIG, which was the topical interest group at the American Evaluation Association. I was the program chair, in which we had over 100 abstracts to review. to develop the program. This is when we were huge. I was then after that the chair. This is like the the protocol that you follow over there. And then I was a past chair. I used to be somebody, and I know we've all been there. Um, and so I was wondering, it's like, is this all there is? Is there more to the profession, my career, besides just cycling through the TIG? And I felt a little disheartened because as the chair way back then, this was in 2013, I wanted to do so much more than just talk about the conference because typically TIGs, they're kind of oriented to develop the conference program and then getting all ramped and ready to go for that single event, which is, a huge uh, accomplishment for profession. But I wanted more than that. I wanted, ongoing conversations, ongoing learning throughout the course of the year, which is something more like an affiliate would do, in all honesty. Anyway, so I felt like I wanted to accomplish more in that capacity. Some additional background, I was in my 11th year as an internal evaluator. This is my 20th in this research office. And I was also inspired by this notion of entrepreneurship. I don't know if that rings a bell for you guys. I think most people have heard of entrepreneurship, which is going out and, starting your own business, working for yourself, and, just being driven to make a difference on your own. Entrepreneurship is different in the in the sense of you're working within an established organization, right? And you're doing the same things. You're innovating on behalf of that organization. And how do you do that? Well, you look outside and you see what other organizations are doing and you learn as much as you can. You have this external orientation, and then you bring those learnings back to your organization and innovate accordingly. So it's creating this space for innovation within your organization. So that's how I've been able to, stay in my current workplace, mainly based on this mindset. Okay, another driving factor was my organization's strategic plan. One of the major, what you say, core values from that plan is developing a culture of continuous improvement, right? Which drives the fulfillment of our mission. And that is something that I truly believe in just in general. It's like, how can we continuously improve? How can we make things better so that we're not just standing still and becoming complacent? And I was also, okay, this was back then, I was consumed with this notion of winning the National Baldrige Excellence Framework for Organizational Process Improvement. And I don't know why, but that was just something that was really intriguing. And I'll show you what the grand vision was. This is an example school system where they have all the processes working together, uh, 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 not only, by function, planning, monitoring, and improvement, but also by level, so it's systemic. So it's at the district, the overall organizational level, then the department, the school, and the classroom. Anyway, can you imagine all these things working together, all these processes? Anyway, it was just a dream that I had. So what if you put all these ideas together, it was this, okay, external orientation to learn from others so that we could, you know, realize this vision here of everything aligned and working uh, according to plan, I guess. Um, but I've changed a lot since then. So what was the methodology that I used to reach out to learn from other school systems? Well, because the idea was to get to the next level of of capacity. And so I identified 6 school districts to benchmark. This was an environmental scan in the states of Virginia and Maryland. 3 of these districts were past state or national award winners in this process. All right, so that's what was driving it. And okay, so identified the 6 organizations, 3 of which, were award winners. Okay, we're going to learn a lot from these guys, and we're going to try to emulate, from their example. And okay, the next step was developing a recruitment email, interview protocol, and a data analysis matrix. And I will just read to you what, briefly what this recruitment email was about. The subject was interest in sharing research and evaluation practices. That was the subject line. Okay, and then it was addressed to Dear Dr. So-and-so at one of these 6 school districts. I am contacting you on behalf of my boss, who is at a higher level than I am, so that, it's boss to boss level. Um, on behalf of my boss at my organization, we in the research office are very interested in learning about the research and evaluation practices at your school system and other neighboring school divisions. More specifically, we would like to know your office's location in the organizational chart, the roles and responsibilities of your staff, your procedures for managing data requests, program evaluations, issue briefs, reports, and other functions, and any success stories and lessons learned from your most challenging initiatives. I will give you a call tomorrow to verify your interest in participating in a 1 hour or less conference call with us in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. So I was writing this email on behalf of my boss because, I had to get him on board. And it had to be, because we're bureaucracy, professional bureaucracies, it's got to be, chain of command to chain of command sort of thing. So that was the recruitment email. The interview protocol was also developed here. I will just forward to the next slide if I can get there. Okay, these were the topics that we were looking for. Again, this is just a volunteer thing. Environmental scan. We're just curious and we'd like to learn more about you guys. So these were the topics. We wanted to know about their organizational structure and staffing, strategic planning, program evaluation, scheduling and reporting, data requests, issue briefs, surveys, how they reviewed research proposals, school improvement plans, assessment practice. I mean, it was like basically an overall scan of everything. Collaboration, and then their most successful initiatives. I'm going back up here. Yeah, so that's what we're focusing on ultimately when we were able to interview folks. And then all that was compiled into a matrix. So we arranged individual interviews with the leaders from these 6 school districts uh, who are involved in research, evaluation, and or accountability efforts. Okay, after interviewing them, we also collected additional documentation after the call, including website content. And then we did something that I think is very important is we validated the findings. It's just like a research project with the respondents. It's called member checking. So just to make sure that what we heard was correct. And we had to make a lot of corrections. I thought I was doing a good job taking notes. My boss did the interviewing. I took the notes. And then also, we identified 2 award-winning districts as case studies. So we, dove deeper into those so that we could learn more from their example. And one of them was from that elaborate schematic that I shared with you just earlier. Okay, and skipping to the implications. Okay, so now we complete the report. We share the report with the report and the PowerPoint presentation with senior staff within my organization and all the respondents within, those 6 school districts. But lo and behold, guess what? Staff from 2 of the organizations that we interviewed were interested in continuing the conversation regionally. I thought, well, that's interesting. I didn't anticipate that. And then one was even interested in hosting a mini conference at their site for everyone to convene and continue what it is that we started. I'm like, okay, let's do this. And that's exactly what we did. We that was the interviews were in the summer. We ended up meeting in January, and yeah, and the agenda was well, we called it like an unconference because we weren't really sure exactly how the agenda would pan out, so we just kept it very fluid, asking everyone to bring concepts that we then organized into a meeting agenda when we arrived. And one of the things that I brought was Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. I don't know if you guys have heard that. It's used to determine the why or purpose of the group, and and also other things like the rules of the road, like the how. Anyway, I'll show you a picture of that, what it looks like. But it turned out to be pivotal using that diagram to help. Okay, let's start with the why, and then why we're convening, and work from there. And then after that meeting, we agreed to establish a Google Drive, which exists to this day. And then we planned our first online consultation. We just, it was just an on-the-fly thing that related to a recurring problem of practice that we had in our division that we wanted to share with others and get their feedback. So that's a wonderful way to build trust, by the way, is making yourself vulnerable. And this was the way to do it, apparently. So we scheduled an online consultation using a protocol. And then we also were able to identify the host for our next meeting, which would be held in the springtime. So we had momentum, we had pace for this conversation. That's essentially how this all started, right? Through all sorts of different means. Okay, and let's see, let's flash forward to today. What do things look like? I mean, this was, like 10 years ago. We have a name. It's the Educational Research and Evaluation Network. It includes 54 members from school districts in two states and the District of Columbia. We've hosted 18 biannual in-person meetings since January 2017. We've held 13 online lunch and learns, facilitated 6 consultation calls. We need to do more, I know. And we established a leadership council with 3 committees. This is mainly just because we kept the conversation going. And this leadership council meets monthly for 30 minutes. That's it. And we get so much done. And we have 3 committees: advocacy. They reach out at the state level to bring in experts who are, pushing out technology platforms typically, or policies. And so we invite them to our meetings to learn more and develop relationships with them. Program planning is for the purpose of establishing all these events, these like the lunch and learns and the in-person meetings and the consultation calls. And then our communications and publicity, they're mainly charged with recruitment and ensuring that we have a robust membership. And yeah, we've been liaising with the Department of Education. We have a good relationship with them, and we are actually having some influence at that level as well. So here's the vision and mission statements that we came up with using Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. So why do we exist? The vision: we empower all learners by building capacity for inquiry and continuous improvement across school systems. And then our mission is to cultivate inquiry among educational research and evaluators by experimenting with innovative methodologies, maintaining high standards of practice, and sharing knowledge and resources both within and outside the network. So we're looking outside as well, the network, to learn, just like it all started. And here's the Golden Circle concept that I found was pivotal in the very beginning, and that is starting with the why. And in this case, the why question was, if there was one thing that you could accomplish with this group, what would it be? So I took everyone's responses at that initial meeting, and then did the thematic analysis. And based on that, we did this collaboratively. We came up with those mission and vision statements. So it's based on just addressing that question in the center of that target there. If there's one thing we can accomplish, what would it be? So it was from the thematic analysis, and the keywords that emerged. That's how these statements were developed. All right. And so, we flashed back to where I was, and this is where I am today. because a lot has changed since then. I'm currently cycling through the leadership of Division H of AERA, the American Educational Research Association. They're in charge of research, evaluation, and assessment in schools nationally. I'm the section chair for applied research, and I'm expected to, become the program chair and who knows what else. And I have very good relationships with the vice president, who is a major champion for youth engagement in educational research and evaluation. She's just amazing. And so she's going to get that message across to the entire division and hopefully the entire organization. That's our goal. We're working together on that. I'm in my 20th year with this research office. I'm still inspired by entrepreneurship. Uh, been working with all sorts of different community partners as a part of my work. I don't work in isolation, which is typical of folks in this role. And I instead am constantly looking outward and interacting with thought leaders, if you will, from different organizations and associations, so that we can keep the conversation going about how we can just take evaluation, the field, to another level, right? And my organization's core belief has not changed. It's still a culture of continuous improvement. So, making sure everything jives, program evaluation, that is, jives with the notion of continuous improvement. That's how we couch everything. It's like, why are we evaluating a program? Well, because we're promoting a culture of continuous improvement. All right. I mean, it's what we do. Um, and then as far as this dream to win this national award, I don't think so. What we did instead was, from benchmarking other school systems, we established a policy and regulation for program evaluation, which is influential throughout the entire organization, and that was good enough. And here's some illustrative quotes. I'm almost done. This is like the penultimate slide, just to show what sorts of principles were in action with all this, and that is the notion of leadership is a choice, not a position, right? You don't need to be in the position to demonstrate leadership. You just create the opportunities for it, just out of curiosity, right? What's your question? What's keeping you up at night, sort of thing. The other quote is, "We are not what we know, but what we are willing to learn." And I truly believe that. I believe that, if you have a burning question, that is what's driving you and your path forward in life, not just in your career. And I sleep on questions all the time. That's the best way to answer them, in my opinion. And then this is a quote from a colleague of mine on Facebook. He's always posting interesting content, but this is a message for you guys. Even if you haven't succeeded yet, you are bound to make meaningful contributions to this world. So it's having this notion of civic responsibility in everything that we do. And then last but not least is the notion of being a trim tab. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Buckminster Fuller. He's amazing inventor. But his whole idea was, leverage. So just, by a small tweak here or there can have huge implications. So if you can just make the little tweaks, and in my case, in this particular case, it's just keeping the conversation going. If you can do that, then amazing things can result, because it is not easy to do that, to keep it going, because you've got to use all your resources to make that conversation continue to succeed. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chad. Thank you so much for that presentation. I will welcome if any of the team, any of the members here would like to ask questions to Chad. Okay, I have one question, Chad. Um, I'd like to know what were some of the challenges that you faced while setting up this, network, and your personal moments of, oh, things are not going fine. Oh, I want to do this. And, how did you manage to take things forward? A lot of times we get demotivated when things don't go right as well. And when your vision is something big, right? So what are some of your challenges and how did you mitigate them?
Let's see. And my daughter wanted me to talk about this part as well. So um, there are always challenges, and I mean that's just the nature of the work, right? What I find to be a challenge is when the conversation stops, and when that happens, I feel like something's wrong. Something needs to keep going. And so, even though we were having these meetings and doing these lunch and learns and whatnot, there was still a heck of a lot of conversation going on in between those events to just keep, people engaged and, valuing what it is that we are trying to accomplish. And I would say the main challenge that I'm having right now, I don't think it was back then. Back then, everything was hunky dory, so to speak. But right now, the challenge is it's like, organizations or programs go through cycles, right? Like a life cycle. I feel like we've completed a cycle where we're at a stage of maturity, and it seems like we're as a network trying to figure out where we want to go next. And I think that is the biggest challenge right here and now for us. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We used to have all of our meetings in person. Now we're moving to a hybrid format. I have a feeling it's going to go completely virtual, and
Yeah,
then we'll see where it goes from there.
yeah, I hear you. Totally, totally. Amanda, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you, Chad. I was wondering if you have a web page and if you publish those research that you do.
For myself
No, the
or
network,
oh, the
actually.
network. Yeah. The thing is, we have everything. Okay, this was one of the rules that we established from the very beginning using Simon Sinek's golden circle, and that is what happens in the network stays in the network. And that was very important because we're talking about government officials, right? And so that could change in the future, but for the most part, we keep everything, within the Google Drive. And yeah, it's not an external facing website yet, although that could change. We'll see where the group goes in the future because we have some fresh leadership and they could take the network to a different direction. But yeah, we've talked about uh, putting together some proceedings, for example, but it hasn't quite taken off yet. We've also explored the notion of a research practice partnership where we would form research practice partnerships with local universities, throughout the state or the region, and then interact via those mechanisms. So maybe that could be the next iteration. That'd be taken to another level. Yeah, thanks for asking that. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions?
I talked too much, didn't I?
Okay, thank you, Chad. Again, I think that was quite insightful. I now welcome Sergio. Sierra, please go ahead and present your press project. So,
Uh, good morning from Mexico. Good evening in the other side of the ocean. Um, I would like to show some slides, please. Let me see. Okay. Um, let me- Is right with that slice?
Yes,
You
perfect.
can is right with the slice? You see it or not?
Yes, yes, we can see your slide.
Okay. Well, trying to understand the objective of this meeting with the mentees and the mentors, I think I want to explain to talk about not a past project but a present project related with evaluation. And why? Because in this project, that is my doctoral thesis project, my research project, I'm I'm take many of the experience that I have as both as evaluator and as public server, no? And the idea is to evaluate not the higher education policy, not only the employment policy, but the linkage between these two policies. No? And the idea is to understand what happens in the past public administration from 2018, 2024 in Mexico. And what's important, because the discussion about education and labor market had been since many years in all the world. For example, Chad talk about the education system. I think in high school or before in primary school. But when we have in Mexico, for example, middle level and higher level, we have a problem with the labor market, no? So the idea is to evaluate this problem, no? So I try to put a presentation that also be some kind a learning process for the mentees. First, we have to understand that there is a public problem around this. In Mexico, a significant number of graduates from higher education institutions face difficulties in the transition between school and work, and particularly in their job insertion, which constitute a potential growing public problem. And how we measure this? Well, our household surveys show us that there is a heightened economic inactivity. It's a somewhat sophisticated indicator, but it's very easy to understand. Many persons don't look for work because they expect that they will not have a work. And then it's open unemployment, underemployment, the duration of unemployment, and labor informality. There are problems that, although in Mexico they are a big problem, also in many countries have the same. And what are the causes of this problem? Well, there are structural factors from the higher education systems. Many of them, Chad Green talk about in the presentation, in his presentation, but also from the labor market, we have structural factors like slow economic growth, technologies substitution, scarce of opportunity, discrimination for young people or by gender, ethnicity, etc., low income and lack of benefits in many job opportunities. But also a cause is the linkage between education and employment. That is between educational institutions with productive sectors, but also between the public policies on higher education and employment. And this is the well, I don't translate the first part of the slide, but it's the research problem, no? The research problem is the linkage between higher education and employment policy in Mexico as one of the explanatory factors for the problem of job insertion and school work transition for graduates. And it's important to take this case because the common is to evaluate a public policy, a program, but not the linkage between two policies. First of all, I make a research, some documents related with the problem, and we see that it's a relation between professional training and economic developments in many studies from Mexico and on an international organization like World Bank. Also, the OECD have made recently in a study of the structural problems of higher education system in Mexico. In some years ago, I also worked in an evaluation of the system of standardization and certification of labor competencies, and we observed that is a limited mobility between educational options in Mexico, problems of terminal efficiency and market orientations. Also, in the last administration, our national development problem make a marginal and fragmented linkage between higher education and employment, and also the sectoral programs that derive from the national programs are very marginal in the analysis of the problem. In the actual administrations, the national program also have a limited linkage between these aspects, but we have a good expectation that the sectoral program for education in Mexico is a higher education program. That shows that for this administration, higher education is important. Also, well, the information of our household service that our National Institute of Statistics in INEGI produce show that there is a problem bit of unemployment between the young people from the higher education level. But how can we make an evaluation? We have different theoretical framework, but also a methodological evaluation framework that both complementate. First of all, we have to know that there is in the mentoring program, there is a model that goes on theory of change, but talking with Amanda, that is my mentee, I suggested her to study together what is called the program theory by Funnell and Rogers that mix the theory of change and the theory of action. These authors say that they are not discovering a new point of view about evaluation. They only make a framework that take together the theory of change and the theory of action. I think that is a good reference for all the main things. But this evaluation method framework finally take us to analyze the causes of the problem and the way to resolve these problems. And because the doctorate research that I'm making is in around public administration, I say that I'm an economics, but I also have studied public policy and now public administration. And the framework, the theoretical conceptual framework that I decide to use is the new public governance. That is talking about the recent problems, both well, in United States, England, but also in Mexico. In Mexico, we have the new public management point of view in many of the public actions, but the idea is to impulse the new public governance and in the analysis of this problem, because this framework talk about interinstitutional coordination, sectoral articulation, social participation, and normative coherence. The presentation of Chad Green talk about maybe the sectoral articulation, I think so. And so we are talking maybe more or less the same. And also I want to talk about the evaluation criterion. For example, OSD talk about 6 criterion. I'm taking 4 of them: relevance, effectiveness, coherence, and sustainability. I don't talk about impact and efficiency because the information to evaluate is not available because we are talking about a ex post analyze that of a problem that is not being taken by the Mexican government. We want to identify the lack of linkage between higher education and employment. But then let's see the next slides. With this evaluation method of taking all the program theory, the idea is to put some questions. I will not read all of them. I will take, for example, the first line. From the theory of change, we have to know what effective transformation were observed in the linkage between higher education policy and employment policy. With the theory of actions, they're not in order, but we, for example, say what institutional coordination mechanism were actually implemented and how did they function. I will read the last one because it's related also with Chad Green. How effective did society participate in the design, implementation, and monitoring of policies? And looking all the intervention theory as a whole, we have to analyze how did this linkage or lack of linkage impact job insertion. How these actions contribute to the school work transition, and what lessons does the experience offer for the administration. Also, I'm looking forward to analyze some best practice that make some kind of how we say, well, better practice to Mexico that we can take for the linkage between this policy. But first, I will have to identify what countries have successful in this linkage, because maybe many of the countries have the same problem of Mexico. So it's one of the challenge that I have to take. The research hypothesis is that during the past administrations, the indicators of job insertion, school transitions, or higher education system did not show improvements. And it's due because of the, in addition of structural factors, labor markets and educational supplies, the linkage between federal high education policy and employment for this population group exhibit weakness in the design and implementation. This deficiency manifested especially in key public governments indicators like international coordination, intersectoral articulation, the participation of involved actors, and the coherence of the normative framework, which limit the relevance, effectiveness, and coherence, sustainability. And I will point out that this thing about coherence of the normative framework is a special thing that maybe in the future the mentoring program will include, because what I say in my experience that I now working in the deputies chamber of Mexico is that you can't implement a public policy that is not related with a normative framework. And there's a good expectation for evaluation studies of laws. The evaluation is not only of public policy, but also of laws. So in my work, I will analyze the public general law of for high education as well as the labor law. The methodological analysis strategy is, as I have explained, the program theory with this linkage with the new public governance, and it will be an applied research that both have quantitative and qualitative methodology. The quantitative will be to understand the problem, no? The high unemployment and underemployment problem for young high education people that get out of that. How you say in English? I don't remember that. They get out, but that finish successfully their studies in high education. But also I need to make qualitative analysis. Somewhat what Chad Green explained for the public school in Virginia, I will need some interviews, and that is the challenge that I have to analyze what people I need to interview, what will be the interview questions, and all that depends on my theoretical and conceptual framework, as well as the evaluation strategy that I will make for this research. Finally, this is a table. I was not able because of time to translate it, so I will explain briefly. that first, in the first column, we have the principal concepts, the liberalization, transition work, school work, normative framework, interinstitutional coordination, intersectoral articulation, participation of actors. These make us evaluation variables, some of them quantitative and other qualitative, and indicators. This is a very important aspect for mentees. We have to be able to construct or use, identify and use good indicators and understand how these indicators are constructed, so in order to be able to analyze them. That was one of the things I have learned in my experience related with statistics. No, if you don't know how the number is constructed, you will not be able to understand, to analyze many of the aspects. So it's a very important thing. And I think in one of the models, Amanda will correct me, but there is a model that in this program that is about quantitative and qualitative methods. No? Finally, we have the strategy, the information searches for these indicators, some of the studies, some of the things, and well, with this last slide, I finished the presentation. I hope it have been interest for you and motivate this kind of studies in your countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. I now invite everyone to clarify their questions. Yes, Amanda, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sergio. It was very nice to hear you, and you're always an inspiration. So I wanted to ask you, as far as you know, or what are you thinking about this intersectoral coordination? Which stakeholders that you think are most important in analyzing the linkage between higher education and employment policies in Mexico?
Well, it's a very important problem. I don't know in other countries, like, for example, United States, no? But in Mexico, we have very nice laws, and in our administrative organization and manuals, they say, for example, in the educational normative and the labor normative, they say that we have education have to look what's happening in the labor market, and also the labor market institutions have to be related with education. But in the practice, there are many, how I say, political, but also bureaucratical problems, no? We have there are two worlds, no? And it's very difficult to construct this linkage. So it is a challenge, no? How to construct a feasible linkage, because the feasibility is vulnerated by political aspect. And we return to one of the basic problems of evaluation of public policies. We have a technical dimension, but also a political dimension. In Mexico, we we have changed a lot of laws with this new administration. So it's a challenge, but it's a very important thing. So it will be very interesting to analyze some international experience so that we have to identify some instruments, administrative instruments that we can um, suggest for the Mexican case, no?
Thank you.
So there are two questions, Sergio, in the chat. One is, would you be able to share the indicators? And another is by Florence Atta, will it be possible to share the slides to Chad and Sergio?
I'll share the slides, of course. No, I will send the presentation to the email direction, no?
Sure.
The email you have, you send me. And about indicators, can you make and again the questions,
Could you share
please?
the indicators for employment? That's the question from Liping.
Well, yes. I have worked for since 15 years in the Ministry of Labor in Mexico in the General Direction of Employment. So I work very with INEGI in the indicators, no? And
Okay.
what I can say is that although in developed countries like United States, for example, many European countries, the unemployment rate, see, is a good indicator. But in Latin American countries and maybe Africa, Asia, it's not a good indicator because people can't remain unemployed for a long period of time. They need to work. And if work is in the informal sector, if work is by underemployed conditions, they will accept. For example, for professionals, young people, there are three kinds of underemployment. One is because maybe they find a job with not enough hours as they will want, but they take it, no? For example, 15 hours a week because it's the only employment. Maybe they are a consultant in evaluations, no? And they can only work for some work. Another unemployment problem is that people earn lower incomes that their professional qualifications will have to produce, no? But also a third indicator that is difficult to measure is the underemployment related with qualification, no? We as a joke, we say in Mexico, oh, that a medical doctor is working selling encyclopedias, okay? Or other activity that is that their professional training in a university is not related. So it's a underemployment because of the lack of the underuse of their professional qualities. So it's not it's not easy to measure it. In Mexico, INEGI, our Statistics Institute, recently produced an indicator that relate if a professional person is working in a professional occupation, but it's not so easy because maybe you have a professional person that is working in commerce, and that is not bad if he's using their professional capacities to sell a lot of things. Maybe selling internet in artificial intelligent products, no? So it's not easy to identify this problem, but these kind of indicators are interesting, and we have to analyze by gender, by age, also by economic sectors, and all of that. No? So if you know, for a message for the mentees, the evaluation of a public policy have also as a base and a social science analysis we have to cover many items, no, not only the evaluation as a methodology, but also the evaluation using our knowledge of social science aspect. For example, in education, no? It's maybe some of the ideas I can say about this team. I hope my English had been understanding.
Yes.
Maybe
Depend-
you organize inside meeting. I can practice my English with Chad and other of the mentors. So it will be very nice to have a
Sure.
inside
Sure.
meeting.
English is
Sure.
just fine.
Yeah.
It's
Chad, you had a
impeccable.
question. Would you like to go ahead and ask?
Yeah, this is just something related to what we're trying to accomplish here in the United States, and that's this notion of establishing a formal occupation for the evaluator role as recognized by the federal government. I wonder if there are any efforts in Mexico as well to establish such an official occupation. Just, speaking of that linkage between higher education, let's say you get a degree in this role, but then there's no official occupation for the evaluator like we have over here. Are there any efforts to that effect in Mexico? Just wondering.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's like, an official occupation, an official job for evaluators as recognized by the
Okay.
federal government. Yeah,
Yes,
because we don't
well,
have that here in the US.
there we have and I think that is the same in many countries. No, we have people that work both in what we call the evaluators ecosystem. We have people that are working that are evaluators in work in the public administration, that work, some of them work as private consultants, some of them in the international organizations, some of them are working in academic institutions. So, and sometimes, for example, I'm evaluator, I might work in the legislative sector. So it's part of my time, I make some evaluation, for example, of laws, no? But other times I have to analyze the laws. And for example, yesterday they asked me to make a budget analysis related with human rights for the next fiscal year. And I have to remember that I work also in the Minister of Finance in the Hacienda in Mexico. So I think we have not not a we are occupied sometimes as evaluators, some of them as for full time, but others have to combine the evaluator activity with other professional activities, no? Is maybe is what I can say, no? And it's a very interesting questions. Maybe some of people from other countries can say about it. Is leaping walk. I don't know from which place are you leaping walk?
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much. And the higher education and employment is a very common problem, especially in China. And also, I saw a research on the payment with the education years. But for now, do you have any fundings on the level of the education with the employment and also the type of the job?
Um, I think you said to ask me if we have some kind of economic resources for the research, no?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, no. This evaluation will be my personal doctoral research. So I have to work in my free time and maybe I can use the internet in the legislative chamber, and they will not, and I will not have to pay for it. But all the research will be my personal work and some of my time, no? But I see it as I investing in my evaluator capacities. No, I think it's very important this for all the mentees. Sometimes we will receive money for what we are making, but in many cases we are not receiving the money. For example, all these BOPE efforts with Eva Jude, about parliamentarians, um, but we have we obtain a very important thing that is one, for example, network. No, that's Chad Green said. Networking is active, very important for evaluators. No, and other thing is that we develop experience. Because, for example, now I'm asking questions and developing ideas and for all this evaluation challenge. So I think that important is to participate in the events like this one, and in the research that I'm making, I will develop many. I think not only knowledge but also abilities to be a better evaluator. Will be my answer. No money, all free.
Yes, sorry, I have another question. Based on your research or evaluation, do you think if there's some people is educated?
Over education? Yeah.
Yeah, over educated, yes.
Well, I remember that in Spain, for example, you have many doctors, master and doctors, because they don't have enough work for the university, for the people that get out of the universities, and they are a lot of opportunities to work as doctors, to study doctorates or masters, no? I think in many of our countries, we are somewhat overqualified. So that's why it's very important that public policy in employment related with higher education policies, because we have to develop new mechanisms to try to reduce this problem of overqualification. For example, we have to develop the how we say that the new entrepreneurship. The English word is not only be a salary worker. We have to be I'd say Green say about intrapreneurship, no? Intrapreneurship. Work by our own is very important, but also have a work with a different with different ideas. Different. We can say I have a salary work, and I will keep that work all my life. No, we have to make different ideas. For example, I have a salary working labor and the legislative sector in Mexico, but I also participate with Eval Youth in this mentoring program, and I also work with some friend in some study. We have to be polyvalent. The word that I remember is polyvalent. It's used in the chemistry. Polyvalence. We have to be polyvalent, no? As evaluators, so that we have be able to use our capacities and don't face the problem of being overqualified.
Liping, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Sergio. Thank you, Chad, for taking the time and presenting your project. I think this has been quite insightful for all of us. I would really want to thank you and appreciate you from the bottom of our hearts. And we are towards the end of our webinar today. And we will keep you guys posted for the next webinar, which is mostly on the 17th, which will be in parts. Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
And good night as well. Thank you, Amanda. Bye-bye.